So I was really curious. I wanted to address what you said about the cinder blocks and because like with my school, they made us do in my school the philosophy was if one person does something wrong, everybody has to kind of be accountable for it. And they
Mm,
do this a lot in Korean culture, but also in the military they do this. So it's kind of like a very old school way of thinking. And then I was surprised recently my niece does jujitsu and judo, and she said that happens in her school too. And she's actually 8 years old right now. So like if one of the kids, is rude or does something wrong, then everybody kind of is held accountable, the whole group. So
mm.
was that the case? It sounds like that was the case in your school. And do you believe that there's benefit to that? Like what are the pros and cons to that?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you framed it in that way by asking the pros and cons, or because we can often look back with rose-colored glasses in hindsight, especially if we gain something positive from it. We can look past um, more problematic behavior that our role models, our teachers, our own parents might have done. I think it's important and to have a nuanced approach to studying anything throughout history as well as in our lives. And when it shaped us, we have to be extra critical about it. So, is there a huge benefit to the very strong discipline that comes from the martial arts background that we recognize as more traditional approach? Yes, most definitely. Um, are there certain cons that we should be aware of, or maybe try to mitigate, or try to work around or understand better? I think that's a wise approach. So I like what you said. You compare it to traditional versus modern, but you acknowledge that someone that trains in a jiu-jitsu school right now, being 8 years old, experiences something similar. I think a good dichotomy to draw between the two is individualistic versus communal. And military is very communal, where we all succeed together or we all suffer together. And this is also something that's found in a lot of different cultures. uh, some might follow more of an individualistic approach, and I guess one could recognize maybe the modern capitalistic, um, maybe Western culture as being more individualistic. Entrepreneurialism is individualistic in nature, but then the communal aspect, the collectivism of, uh, you know, it takes a village to raise a child. Everyone works together, or that you are guilty even by association sometimes might be seen as a negative consequence of this kind of behavior. So I don't know. I think that there are definitely pros and cons to the idea of being punished as a group when one person transgresses. I know personally, I took that very deeply to offense in school. If someone did something wrong, we all got detention. I would advocate against that and speak out against authority all the time in that regard. But when it came to the martial arts, when we were punished, it was less about punishment, I feel, and more about taking this opportunity to work on something else. It wasn't just about although we did have these, like my Taekwondo instructor had what I guess a shinai is what they would call them in Kendo, and they would strike you with that. Um, but again, less about punishment, more about just strengthening the body under stress and hardship in measured amounts. Um,
Yeah.
and push-ups help you get stronger, you know?
Oh yeah. I mean, when I was 8, so from my perspective, it was different, right? And I'm not gonna pretend like I have the deep understanding of this discipline to even have a real, like, good, thorough conversation about this, but from the little that I know, I guess I could just share my personal experience is
Yeah.
Me personally, I believe in the individual sovereignty of each person. I don't buy into the group think. I've never been like go with the crowd or go with the flow type person. I've always been like my own person with my own thoughts, and I never really followed authority that well. So individualism has been kind of the theme of my life, and even the mission of the Business Priestess podcast is to, uplift and honor the individual sovereignty of each person. However, when I was younger, it didn't bother me that when those things happened, because I was a ballerina like all my life, and my ballet teachers were Russian, and it was a very strict discipline. And what was happening there was much more fierce than what was happening in my martial arts school. So Taekwondo was a way for me to kind of escape the strict discipline of ballet. Like, I love ballet, but I trained it so much. Like, my feet would peel with the point shoes and everything. My feet would peel, bleed, and
It's really intense. Yeah, I understand
yeah,
that.
it was just so painful, and I would fall like I would be on point on a slippery floor, and then I'd fall, and I'd have all these injuries, so like serious injuries at like very young age, at 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. And they were very strict because my teachers were about Russian, so they were very, very strict. Like, they would walk around with a ruler, and if you did anything wrong, they would like slap you with the ruler. And so I loved the art, but I needed like a way to get away from it and do something more fun. So Taekwondo was kind of my way of escaping that strict discipline and doing something more fun.
Mm.
So when they so it didn't bother me that much, because like push-ups were fun to me. I was a little kid. I didn't know, it was just fun to me. Everything was novel, and everything was kind of the reverse movement. So it was also recovery time for me, because in ballet you have to like point, and then in taekwondo you have to be the other.
Works.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's like recovery for me, it was almost like a
Mhm.
restorative movement for me.
That's
um
fascinating.
yeah, so it didn't hurt me in any way when with the whole group think thing, and I'm sure there's a deeper philosophy of why they do that. It didn't bother me. It made me stronger, actually, because I was able to do so many push-ups and be okay, and it conditioned me for, I mean, that lasts a really long time. It doesn't just last a few years. Even now, like, I can do a lot more push-ups than most women. So it
Yeah.
conditioned me for life. So I'm grateful for that. Um, but I guess a con would be is like just, and I don't even know if it's true, but just something stuff I've seen in like movies, like Full Metal Jacket. Did you see that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
It's been a long time, but I could go on and refresh my memory because I'm not really sure I'm thinking of what you're thinking.
Yeah,
So,
so the lieutenant or the sergeant, the head of the boot camp, would
mhm,
punish this one kid who was really weak. So I think the difference here is like mental health, and also the constitution of the person, because I've always been like a very strong person. So
mhm,
even as a kid, so like things like that didn't really bother me at all, but because I was coming from a much stricter discipline. However, this guy who's in boot camp, he had like a more sensitive constitution, and the some mental issues too, and the sergeant was really hard on him, and every time he made a mistake, he would wake up the whole like group at like 4 a.m. and make them do like crazy drills. And they got so mad at him, they like beat him up with bars of soap. Like, they would put bars of soap in like a towel and then beat the heck out of him because they were so mad at him. And then
wow.
he lost it, and he eventually killed the guy, the sergeant, because
Mhm.
he was just so traumatized by the whole experience. So that's where, like, I mean, it's a movie, right? It's Hollywood, but that's where I
There-
can kind of yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was like that. That's a very legitimate, you know, portrayal of someone being pushed to their limit.
Hmm.
Most definitely. Most
And
definitely.
it yeah.
Do you see any moments in your life where you think that went too far? Like that girl that you mentioned earlier, that was taken to the front and and grabbed by the hair.
I not in martial arts. In martial arts, it was always positive for me because it taught me frustration tolerance, patience, discipline, and in martial arts, discipline is really, really important because as I got older and I trained like in college, I trained in other martial arts like Muay Thai and Capoeira, and was training like every single day, like really hard, and that like I was honing my skills in college, and I realized like I was really dangerous. Like because just from the conditioning over the years, it made me dangerous, and I didn't realize this until one day, like um a friend of mine like slipped or something and like hit my face, like was about to come hit my face by accident, and my reflex was so fast that it, like punched him in the nose and he got a nosebleed like instantly. It was so fast. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." It was so fast I couldn't even like control my body. And he was like, "Holy crap, like dude, you almost broke my nose." And so it's kind of made me realize like the training and the conditioning you get as a martial artist, it just makes you it makes you dangerous. So
Yeah,
the
and
discipline has to be there because you can hurt people with your body now, so and the knowledge that you have, so you have to have that discipline in order to realize that you just can't go around hurting people with what you've been taught, but you have to be very respectful of the power that you have.
I love that. Love that. You have to be very respectful with the power that you have. Absolutely true. Because when it comes down to it, do you was it I think Miyamoto Musashi that said, better to be a warrior in the garden than a gardener in the war. And someone who is dangerous, you know, some might see as a threat, but with discipline and danger, one could have the ability to protect that which they care about, that which they hold dear, whether it's themselves or others. A dangerous person is a capable person. Someone who isn't dangerous is someone who is subject to the whims and power of anyone else who dares to swing their weight around. So
Yeah,
most
I
definitely.
totally agree with that. And when you see the some of the masters and the teachers now, you can tell which ones really understand martial arts and have embodied it, and the ones that haven't, because the ones that haven't are very rough with their students, and they teach their students things that the students aren't ready for. So that is kind of like, to me, that seems it's immature, because if a real master or someone who's like really, really, really skilled would never hurt their students, would never go so rough on their students. Like they'll challenge them, but they'll never like try to overpower them because they have so much skill that they know how to hold that back and have their students be able to reach this place of embodiment and learn and challenge them. But like there are some unfortunately there are some like black belts and in all different martial arts and masters who are very rough and hurting their students, and just to kind of show how skilled they are, but to me that's not really an embodiment of martial arts.
So what you're saying here is it's important to strike a balance. One needs to be disciplined and strict and tough on their students, but find the tipping point where you aren't abusing your students.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know that from like sparring, you probably have this experience when it's with someone really skilled. They give
Mhm.
you the space to, even in that sparring session, to grow as a martial artist, because they give you the space to, they challenge you, but they give you the space to kind of, show what you've got also. Someone
Yeah,
who's not as wise or like knowledge mature or evolved, they'll just overpower you and not give you a chance. Do you know what I mean? Have you ever had this happen?
absolutely. And we had a saying in my school for a while about uh, the people we'd rather spar, no matter what belt you are, the best people to spar are either the white belts or the black belts. People in the middle are the worst people to spar with because the people who are white belts and just the beginner belts, they're learning, they're honing their technique, they're getting better, and it's really promising to work with them. And even if you are a more experienced person going against a white belt, you could work on your evasion, you could work on your defense. You don't have to pick them apart. So instead, you work on your control. So, like you said, a good martial artist will work with someone that's lower rank and have that ability to give them that space. But you still get to work on yourself. Just because I'm working with a white belt doesn't mean I'm not growing. I'm not getting better. I just now have to shift my focus on other attributes where I can grow. And if you are facing against a more experienced martial artist, you'll hope that they are so experienced, like a black belt, that they would have that self-control. The people in the middle, where they just discover their power, they just discover how fast and how strong they can go, they just learn how to apply themselves, but don't have the ability to have self-control, regulate themselves, both emotionally or physically. Those are the worst people. So I wouldn't say like it's an individual kind of person. It's more like part of the experience. You don't know anything, you start to learn something, then you gain some control along the way. There's always some overlap, but there's always this small, like, specific niche area that people tend to go into for however small period of time, where you're the most annoying person to spar with.
Yeah, they have a lot to prove.
That tends to be, right? You
Yeah.
finally learn how to punch hard enough to break a board. You finally, got in a shot on this one guy. Now you're getting a little ego in there. Now you're getting a little too empowered. So you have to check yourself.
Yeah. Same in a wolf pack too, is the adolescents are usually the most aggressive and the rest of the pack are just like chill, but it's the adolescents that are like constantly fighting and power struggling. Um but yeah, I was interested, how did you so you mentioned you were bullied as a child and then martial arts and your master in particular helped you to build confidence. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so when I was first thrown into my martial arts school, I was expecting like, okay, great, now I'll actually learn how to really kick some ass. I'm just thinking like, let's see what I can do. So I went into it with a positive mindset that I was going to learn something at least. But I came at it from a negative perspective that I was going to be fighting more. After I started training, I stopped getting bullied. No one knew that I was training, but something changed. I didn't know what. I went into high school and I didn't get to a single fight. I didn't know what the hell happened. I was looking forward to actually, dishing out some pain to people who deserved it. But it didn't come to pass. And it wasn't until much later that I realized that learning how to defend myself, learning how to throw a punch, learning I wasn't made of glass, learning that I could do more than I thought I could handle, that built up my confidence, which affected my body language, which affected the way I spoke, which affected my ability to make eye contact. And bullies are like any predator, those who seek the weaker prey. When a lion is looking to go after whatever they eat, they're not going after the strongest, most capable. They go after the old or the young or the weak, the lame, and because they're naturally easier to catch. And a bully who is looking to overcome whatever insecurity they have uh, by beating down someone they can won't waste their time on someone who's going to fight back. And they might subconsciously or consciously realize this, go towards those who look like they pose less of a threat. And it's not based on just how big you are, it's also on your body language. If someone said something to me when I was younger, I would just try to shrug away and, hopefully they go away. I'll just ignore them. That'll work, right? No, it doesn't. Ignoring your bully does not work. It makes them realize, wow, I can do whatever I want to this guy. He's not going to stop me. But the moment they say something to me now, when I was a teenager after training for a year or two, I was like, Oh yeah? Okay. I wasn't overreacting like I used to. I wasn't shying away like I used to. I was responding with a strong voice, with eye contact. Someone insulted me? Okay, whatever. That's good to know. All right. I see where you stand. Oh, you're threatening. Okay, you're gonna challenge me to a fight after school? Okay, whatever. And it just never happened. So 3 times I was said, oh yeah, let's take it outside. And I went outside, nothing happened. Just the fact of me being present, just the fact that I spoke up was more than enough for them to just say, whatever, man, whatever. And it just blew off, you know?
Yeah.
And that was it. The confidence of believing in myself, of, wow, I can punch harder than I thought. I can take a hit. I can do more push-ups than I thought. The belief that I could defend myself was the confidence I needed to avoid getting into a fight at all.
Yeah, that's so true. It does give you martial arts does give you so much confidence, especially kids, and
Mm-hmm.
it makes a big difference, especially with all the bullying nowadays. I think you have something of great value to teach your son and other kids because you teach kids about body language. Body language is everything. I totally agree. Um, in the animal world, body language is everything because obviously they don't, verbally speak. But even among us, they say like 90%, 80 to 90% of our communication is through body language.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's I was asked the other day, I primarily teach gymnastics, which, as I mentioned before, when I was younger, I never imagined myself doing anything athletic in my life, you know. But martial arts, my master Rayo, may he rest in peace, he gave me the belief, the confidence that I could do whatever I wanted. And so when I said, I feel like learning how to backflip, I did. I committed myself to that. And I had two good friends that helped me through training in that. And now I teach gymnastics and I manage a whole school, my wife and I. I love training even to this day, and uh, helping and helping my students any way I can too with their confidence in whatever areas they find themselves in. Do you have you taught um, something to the youth and get that same sensation I'm talking about?
Yeah, so when I was in college, I taught capoeira to my peers, so not younger people. And then as a teacher, as a coach, um, so this podcast is, based off my business coaching business. And,
Mm,
I'm a spiritual business coach. So I've taught a lot of youth, about spiritual matters. So I'm a guide in spiritual matters. And then also officially and unofficially, because I actually taught Sunday school for many years. So that was kind of like the official. And then unofficially is like through my business coaching. So I coached a lot of young adults, high school kids, age kids, and middle school age kids um, about empowerment and embodiment and how to start their own businesses, how to become entrepreneurs, and giving them the skills and the guidance to, if they wanted to one day start their own businesses. So, Business Priestess is all about, embodiment. And that's why I even wanted to have this, conversation with you. I thought it'd be so interesting because one of the biggest ways to embody something, right, that I found is through movement. And
hmm
actually, like, um, so all those, for example, so in business coaching, I coach people to come into their own and become successful by embodying who they truly are. Right.
Wow.
So the value in their business is actually them, and that value is intrinsic. And the more skilled they get and the better they get at being able to embody themselves through their business and activate their life purpose through their business, the more successful they're going to be. And that's what I teach through business coaching. And then martial arts is so similar from my experience and from lots of different, you know, um, perspectives is that martial arts is also the embodiment of amazing values, right? There's legacy, there's discipline, there's um art. So you're embodying like art, right? Thousands of years of art. You're embodying thousands of years of discipline, of values, of legacy, of like your master taught you that confidence, right? You were able to embody that confidence in your, in your body language and in your everyday kind of um interactions with people, and it really helped you in your life, and now you're passing that on to other kids. So that embodiment is really like the mission and the goal, and I just find it so fascinating.
Yeah, I bet you must. I mean, you cross a lot of different layers there, between something physical, like the money that one deals with in a business, and the material or goods that are being marketed, uh, and then something spiritual, uh, starting with the core of the person that's moving this product. I think that's a very valuable lesson that you're teaching to people, to tap into what's most important. You are the X factor in your business. You are the thing that truly does make or break it. So I think that's such a wise thing to approach it from that angle and build it up from what's most important within you. And that's really amazing.
Thank you. Because money is really just a byproduct. It's
Mhm.
just it's like what comes with embodiment. If you can embody, right, your business, activate your business, then
Mhm.
money is just one of the side effects, right? Of you being able to do that. And then so same with martial arts. If you're able to embody the true value, the true discipline, the true beauty, the true art form of martial arts, then I you could proudly say like I'm a martial artist, right? And
No, most certainly. In fact, another book that's really iconic in the martial arts scene is The Art of War by Sun Tzu, and tons of people in business read The Art of War because of what it teaches them about uh, mastering your own self-discipline and applying yourself in basic scenarios of strategy, with working with others diplomatically or competing against them. So I think that there's a lot of parallels to be made between one's business and their life and martial arts, most certainly. I love the terms you use that are typically associated with a spiritual discipline, but I think you heard embody, activate, and you refer to them with regards to money, or the business or the product or whatever that you're doing. I think that's interesting to take those terms and apply them in that spin, to apply them that way.
thank
Do you
you.
find like the language that one uses to be important in helping to shape what it is that they're committing themselves to, what their goals are, like what words you choose?
Yeah, because, at the end of the day, my mission is not to make money. Of course, that's one of the goals, but it's almost like just a byproduct of what I do. It's like a
Mhm.
symptom. It's like a side effect, right? And it's a nice side effect because it helps take care for me to be able to contribute, right? I could give back more to my family, to society. So it's a great side effect, but um, my goal
It's more
main,
than a side effect.
yeah. But my main goal, right, has always been to just, like you said, activate my life purpose through my business.
Mm,
So I'm sure that's what you're doing also when you and your wife are teaching gymnastics and self-confidence and movement healing too, and not like all this like fun, to me, movement is healing. So you're teaching these kids like a discipline, an art form, a value system, like boosting their confidence, keeping them out of, like trouble. And you're doing this, and it really is like not for money. It really is an embodiment of everything you've learned so far as wisdom and knowledge that has benefited you, and now you're passing it on to another generation. So I think it's like so beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I love my place of work. I've been working there for over 14 years now. It's part of a franchise, the Little Gym, and it has been teaching in a way that I believe is most beneficial to children. Something that kids need more than anything is not just gymnastics, but an outlet to learn um, in a safe haven for them to grow and still be the children that they are. I think one of the best things I learned from it was that we approach it with our curriculum with what we call three-dimensional learning. They call it Get Moving, Brain Boost, and Citizen Kid. The Get Moving is the physical aspect, okay? So you're going to be learning coordination, body control, your muscle development, so you can perform skills like cartwheels and back handsprings. The Brain Boost is learning how to apply the mental game, connecting skills together, and learning how to develop spatial awareness. These are all mental things. But the citizen kid aspect, I think, is really important, especially because we're a non-competitive gymnastics school. And we make sure to point that out, not to show that our children, our students lack discipline or they lack the drive to compete, but that's not what's most important. We are focusing on building quality emotional intelligence as well as teamwork capabilities and and caring for one another while we do our skills, while we do gymnastics. So it's certainly nowhere near as strict as my martial arts background used to be, but I think new research in conscious parenting and child psychology has allowed us to approach the same principles we did in martial arts and with a fine tooth comb, with a more nuanced and detail oriented approach. Like we can view kids as individuals and rise them up as a team. And I think that's that balance we're also trying to strike, right, between the individual and the collective, right? In the martial arts world, we are individually going up against our opponents. We are individually going to compete in our to perform our forms, our kata, our in Taekwondo we would have the forms. I think they were called Tegu and gosh, what was the other one called? There's a whole nother set I remember. But you would do these things individually, but you got there together as a group.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I love that. I love how you illustrated that. And so yeah, I want to talk about that like moment um right before sparring when they announce like okay at the end of class, right? That like okay, get ready to spar. And sparring in my school meant like almost full contact. That's what it meant in my school. So
Mm-hmm.
now I know they don't do that as much in Taekwondo. In jujitsu they do. They go pretty full on. It's like it's like partial contact, but it's a lot of physical contact, right? In jujitsu. And then
Mm-hmm.
in Taekwondo now they don't do as much full contact, but when I was younger they did. So
Mm-hmm.
I just want to talk about that moment when they announce that to you. You're in class, you finish your drills, you finish your forms and everything, and then they're like okay, get ready to spar. And then they pair you up with someone and there's this anticipation of sparring with someone. Of course everybody was bigger than me and usually a guy because I was 8 years old. But um and they didn't separate the kids classes back then. So that moment of like the unknown, right? And being like scared and nervous and the anticipation and really not knowing what was going to happen, if you were going to freeze, if you were going to be able to do anything you learned, you start kind of your mind starts racing. It just it's like the exact same kind of mental Olympics that you go through when you're first starting a business.
Mm-hmm.
So when people are first starting a business, they go through the same type of mental gymnastics where they're like, oh man, I don't know if my ideas are any good. I don't know anything about this. I don't know anything about entrepreneurship. I don't know if my programs are even going to sell. I don't know if anyone, maybe people are going to think I suck. Like, I don't know what I'm doing, right? And kind of
So
like that imposter syndrome and everything. That is
yeah,
so comparable, right, to like that moment where you're about to spar. And can you bring us back to like those moments where and how you felt and how you got through that, like being scared of like sparring?
yeah. So um, my perspective on sparring, my personal reaction to sparring has changed so much over the time that I've been training for these past 20 years or so. And um, so when it came to, I'll include bullying in this. You know, when I got jumped as a kid, there was a gripping sensation of fear. I remember my first fight was when I was walking my sister back home and she was 4 and I was 8. These were the days where you could do that as a kid, walk from school to home and do so with a 4-year-old. And I was being confronted by one of my bullies, and I thought, okay, here it comes. Time to do whatever I saw in all of my favorite cartoons and movies. And I and he goes to try and do something, and I throw the weakest kick, thinking in my head it was something. He grabbed my leg, threw me aside, and body slammed me. After that, I realized how weak I was. And every fight, I was mortified. I was constantly gripped in fear. And I, again, was unconfident. I just looked down and I was just taking it. And it was just heart pounding lump in my throat. In martial arts, in because I came back from that background, from knowing what being beaten is, and then put in a safe space, although we were punching and kicking each other, we did so on pads. We did so in drills. We did it in stages. So you would hit a pad. You would hit. You would. I guess you would say we did kata or forms, which were, hitting the air. So shadow boxing, it falls in that same element. Hitting focus mitts, and then hitting while someone would hit you back in controlled one one step sparring. And then we would do with gear on, we would do, okay, now you're only allowed to throw this hit while you spar. And so you knew to expect it. And this trained you to the point where, okay, now it's full on sparring. Go all out. You have all your tools at your disposal. Your opponent does too. And it's in a controlled environment. I know that somebody's going to stop this guy if he goes too far. My teacher's here. I trust him. I've learned to trust my master. I've learned to trust my opponent, my sparring partner. I didn't feel that fear that I felt when I was being beaten up on the street. I felt I could trust this person, and although there was times when a fist would come at my face and I would flinch, I knew I would be okay, and I grew from that. Eventually, I stopped being so trigger shy. Eventually, I stopped flinching. I gained the hand-eye coordination to hit my opponent before they hit me. But if they hit me, I would deal with it and push through. I learned how to fight through it. When I got aired out from a hit to the gut, my instructor would yell, "Keep going! You can do this!" Having someone literally in my corner got me up on my feet and pushed through the pain, and I knew I could handle anything. When I got in my first tournaments, there was a flutter of adrenaline. There was a little bit of fear. But overcoming that fear was the backup of all the confidence and belief that my instructor showed in me, to the point where on my first tournament, I got to my final round and I got cocky and tried to do a spinning, jumping kick that was low rate success, and I ended up losing the match. I was okay, but I got second place when I could have easily gotten first place if I didn't get too overconfident. But now I get super excited for sparring. I love the challenge. I love the thrill. I love the idea of someone coming at me with all they've got. In mixed martial arts now, there's grappling involved and there's punching and kicking involved, and we go at it, as one knows MMA to do now. And it's the most thrilling and exhilarating experience because out of each match, I come away knowing something new about myself. I now learn that beyond that fear, there is great success. Whether I actually win or lose the match, I win every time because I've learned something new about myself.
Yeah, wow. And I just like love how you illustrated how with sparring it's more of like a mindset, right? Like the person that you're really sparring is yourself because you have to like get past the fears and the anxiety and the frightening, being frightened, and it's a mindset. Like you're sparring against your own mindset, and then when you're able to transcend that, when you're able to come out on the other side, right, and be like victorious, then that's when it becomes like something that is more natural to you. That's when you start to enjoy sparring. But until that point, it's challenging because you're really sparring yourself in many ways. It's like a mind, it's more of a mindset than like a physical prowess kind of thing, because with physical skills, I feel like anyone, if they drill long enough, they can be, skilled physically. Like anyone can do that if they train hard enough, if they drill repetitively enough, they can get good at certain skills. But the mindset, that's something different,
I
and that's
agree.
not
And
so easily like done.
you said that best earlier when you were comparing it to the imposter syndrome and the mental gymnastics that one has to go into when they get into a business. You're competing against other uh, business owners, but ultimately you're your worst enemy,
Oh
and
yeah.
you're the determining factor. You're the
Yeah.
reason why you are not farther along in whatever venture or goal you have.
Yeah, and people are surprised to find this out, but in business, success, like 90% or more, has to do with mindset.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of
People,
people think it's the strategies, and you have to have good advertising and marketing, and it's more of the masculine energetic stuff. Like those things are important, but to be honest with you, you can hire anybody who's more skilled than you at like doing that, like building websites, doing what email campaigns. You can just hire people to do that, but guess what? You can't hire people to do, right? You can't hire people to get past your fears of being an entrepreneur. You can't hire someone to help you with imposter syndrome. You can't, it's something that you have to like conquer on your own. And it's really like 90% of entrepreneurship success has to do with getting past your fears, believing in yourself, and getting to that place where no one is your competition. You're in a class of your own now, and the only competition you really have is your own mind.
wow, and there's a lot to be said about that. I love how you said, they're making all these plans and everything. That reminds me of a quote from Mike Tyson. Everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. You know? And it's true. Like you go in with this strategy sometimes in sparring, right? You're like, okay, let's do this. I'm going to go in with, a jumping front kick, follow up with a reverse punch or a cross, an uppercut, and then I'll finish with a round kick. Sparring starts, you go for that first move. Oh no, he's punching me in the face. I'm flinching. I gotta move. I gotta change up my game. And you alluded to that with like a masculine approach. So that's it. So I understand what the masculine and feminine are really divided into the way of thinking, the way of approaching things is. With a masculine approach, it's very direct and you make a plan A to get to plan B, kind of linear thinking. But are you alluding to then the feminine being um, all encompassing, kind of taking in other qualities and change into effect? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I love how you explain that. You have really great intuition to be able to illustrate that.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, so the divine masculine is so important in business because it's like the bones of the body. It gives you structure, it gives you a
Mhm.
strong foundation. It's like your systems, your automations, your website, your business strategies. And it's so important because without a strong divine masculine, nothing else would be able to flourish, because without the bones in the body, your whole body would fall apart, right?
Mhm.
So, however, as a woman, and even as a man, you want to balance the both energies, because you can't just be doing all the time. There's also a point where you have to like be. And the feminine is about just being and just creating and just attracting.
Just be. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a very almost Taoist approach, you know.
Yeah. Totally.
Just
And when you have a strong masculine actually in your being, in your nature, and in your business, then then the divine feminine can flourish more, because now you have a strong structure. So now the divine feminine can really come out and like be start being creative, start attracting, and that's where the magnetism comes in, right? But it's hard to do that if you don't have any structure.
yeah. Yeah, there's that yin and yang, right? That balance we're trying to strike here. It's like that's I think that's the main theme of this conversation, right? You know, between finding the discipline between being caring or abusing, you know, finding the balance um, in the individual versus the collective, you know, finding the balance between the masculine and the feminine in our approach towards challenges in life, or whether it's business or martial arts, finding the balance between uh, you know, fear and confidence. So we're not too overconfident, cocky, like I mentioned I was at one point, or too fearful that you get bullied or pushed around. You know, there's always this balancing act on every aspect and every level of our lives that one needs to take into account.
Yeah, it's so true. I love it. I love your summary of that. And the thing also with sparring, as a young child, I remember how nervous I was. Like the guys who were sparring with me were big and strong. So
Mm-hmm.
I would like I was just scared, but I also started to learn over time of course they're going easy with me as well because I'm small, but um sometimes men don't know their own strength, and they go harder than they think they are. And, so I learned to navigate that as a child. And also, I learned to navigate like that you have to react differently to different personalities when you're sparring with them.
Mm.
So, like, when you spar with that person that has like a really big ego, you have to like spar a certain way with them, because if you go too much with them, you can get like sucker punched or whatever. So you have to like you have to help balance their like ego too. And then there's other people where you can be more free. And those are the people usually that are like highly skilled, because then you feel more free to like kind of be yourself. And
That reminds me of the other aspect of martial arts, which, you know, I wish more, and maybe this is more of a criticism that I shouldn't really express right now, but like I feel like a lot of law enforcement could really appreciate and benefit from, which is conflict resolution. You know, to de-escalate a situation, right? And martial arts has that great benefit to giving you that to assess a situation, but also to read an individual, like you said, and see what is the best approach for this person. You know, I have a guy that I spar with that, you know, he's gotten better. He's gotten a lot better. He was a teenager when I first met him, and he was a hothead, and he also had his own learning disabilities, but um, with it came all this extra strength and pent up frustration. And nobody liked sparring with him because he would throw spinning back fists all the time. He would spam them. You could see him coming a mile away, but if you were unlucky, you would get clocked. So you needed to, you know, watch yourself when you're with him. Um, Anytime he wouldn't do it all the time. He would only do it when he was losing in desperation, you know. And when I would go against him, I would note that, okay, I need to win, but just only enough, you know, just so I can encourage him to also feel like he's in a controlled state. He's not desperately losing. And whenever he does start losing his temper and start throwing them, I jam him up. And although it's not necessarily my approach to grapple someone right away in that position when they're throwing a spinning back fist, I do it just to kind of de-escalate. I'll get in as soon as I see him about to throw that. I'll tie him up and I'll hold him up against the wall and I'll be like, "Are we good? We're good. We're good, right? We're still friends. We got this, right?" Just a sense of reassure him, and then we break away and then we go back at it. And and uh, and he's learned to trust me a little more. So he's not lashing out to others or myself as much, and he's become a great training partner now. But in his early years, he would overreact and, like you said, not know his own strength. And as a woman, I imagine you have to deal with that way more than I have to. The world that you had to navigate throughout your life, the kind of conflicts you had to resolve had to probably have been, way more complicated than ones that I had to probably look out for, especially as I got older.
Yeah, I mean, just a little different, right? And I got good at, like, navigating different personalities for sure, and through martial arts sparring,
Mm,
and, um, and just being able to it helps you with a lot of things, like impulse control, frustration tolerance. 'Cause I didn't have, like, the best frustration tolerance. I still don't. I still have to practice that more and more probably my entire life because, I get I can get angry, like, I have a temper. So, you probably too like, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and martial arts really helps you to, like, keep that under control, you know?
yeah, I have to say I had a temper. I used to. When I was younger, when I was bullied, I did. Martial arts taught me self-control and to value uh, not being a slave to my emotions. And maybe this is my more masculine, energy, one would say, thinking here that the rationale, the reason, the logical side has prospered me far more than than emotional reactions to situations. Although my emotions drive me, I choose which emotions I wish to have, and that's more from studying Stoic philosophy. But I think that martial arts training has given me the tools of self control to decide what I choose to feel and think. Things are going to happen in my life that I can't control. Things are going to arise that are tragedies or injustices, things that are unfair. I can't control them. What I can control is me. And I've come to a point where I no longer get angry. I can't remember the last time I have. It's been probably over a decade since I have explicitly become angry, upset, frustrated in that regard, where I just feel rage. Um, Sadness I felt, when my master passed away, and when I lost my cat, I cried during those moments, but very, very little now impact me like they used to. Martial arts has given me that, but it is right. You say you got to work on it. It's not. You don't achieve enlightenment or something. It's just a constant reevaluation and of your mindset, asking yourself questions. And I think this goes back to what you said. Imposter syndrome, doubting yourself. There's another balance. I feel there you don't want to doubt yourself, so doubt your abilities to the point where you don't achieve anything or succeed at anything or try anything, but you also don't want to believe you're always right in your approach or your reaction. Anytime I find myself slipping into a mindset that might be impulsive, like impulse control, like you said, I ask myself, is this response going to benefit? Is my mindset right now the best state to be in, just solving this problem or making through whatever it is? How do you I've learned breathing techniques to help me visualize that and approach any emotions that I might feel start to come upon me. But How do you handle your anger that you have to deal with?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I think like the current state of the world right now upsets me. But
Doesn't make it easy, that's for sure.
yeah, but I do have like this inner peace, and it's based in meaning like I know how to stay in the eye of the storm when there's like a hurricane going on, and that's mostly attributed to like my strong relationship with my creator, where I can find like, everlasting peace no matter what's going on. So I tap anytime I tap into that through like prayer or um just spending time with him, um I can tap into that. So I always have that like garden in my heart for, in my spirit, where I can tap into that. But as far as like being able to get past the unknown and pushing through like that uncertainty, you know, as a business owner, it just after you do it so many times, you just keep you just get used to it. It's just like when you're rock climbing and you go to that next peg, like you're bouldering or something, and you're like, oh man, what if I fall while reaching for the next peg? But then you're like, oh, I got to do it though. People are watching me. So then you right? So then you grab the next peg and you're like, "Okay, I'm still alive." And if you do that often enough, where you just take the risk and you just push through and you grab the next peg, then after a while you start getting pretty good at it, and that's exactly what entrepreneurship feels like. It's like we go through all the time as a business owner not knowing what the hell is going to happen. Like
Yeah.
most of the time we have no idea what the fuck is going to happen. But
No, not with the market. There's
yeah,
a
you just push
John on the
through. Like
field.
you have to push through it. Like you just have to nothing is ever going to be like certain, so you have to push through it. You have to try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but you have to keep trying. Like it's you're only defeated if you don't actually try something.
That's incredible. So, like, what is that quote? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. But I think that quote needs to continue, and then another step, and then another step, and then you got to take the next step, and the one after that, and climbing up that boulder with the pegs. Yeah, absolutely. So it's life is just a series of pushing to the next step because it's just it. I think we delude ourselves into thinking there's a destination, right? As a business owner myself, or as a martial artist, as anything, growth stops happening when you get to a goal. You gotta you can goal setting is important, but I don't like to call them goals. I like to call, because that makes it feel like final. I like to call them steps, and they are never ending. And you got to love that. You got to really enjoy that if you really want to keep growing in whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I love that. And that's you embodying the divine feminine, actually.
Am I?
You
Thank
are,
you.
yeah. Because masculine is all about like doing and accomplishing and just goal setting and crushing, like, and then what you brought to light was more divine feminine, where you're like, no, it's not always about just goal setting and goal achieving. It's also, the bigger picture here, right? The embodiment of the entire process.
I can
Yeah.
see that. And you mentioned your spiritual background. You know, there's a lot of that overlap in the martial arts, right? There's a spiritual aspect to the things that we practice. Some of which, I imagine, does it contradict or come or complement um, whatever religious background or perspective you have. I know it does in some ways with me, not because of the religion I have, but because the religion I don't have. I'm a non-believer. In the supernatural, in the spirit. I don't want to say the spiritual, because I feel like that word is such an all-encompassing term that describes qualities of life rather than something that is, like a god or spirits or conscious beings outside of those that we interact with. I grew up as a Muslim in a Christian majority nation, and as I've come to my own, I have admitted to being uh, a non-believer in those areas, but I can't help but recognize the power it has in inspiring others and motivating them, or even helping me visualize things that I need to do. So do you find any of that overlap of contradiction or complementing of what spiritual disciplines are involved in the martial arts you trained in, or how they seeped into your life versus the tradition that you believe in?
Yeah, so I don't really buy into like I'm not like a group thing person, so I don't usually like so I wouldn't say I'm religious because I don't like to be pegged into like a group of religious like a religious organization.
Okay.
I'm
I'm
not
sorry.
comfortable.
I'm sorry for associating or
Oh
assuming.
no. Yeah, no. I mean everyone's spirituality is so deep and complex, so there's no way that you would have known that.
Mhm.
But I don't like to identify with like religious organization.
Okay.
Um, I just I just have a very close personal relationship with my creator. Like I know him like I'm getting, like how I'm getting to know you right now and how I know my husband and how I know my best friend. Like I know him as it's like a personal relationship.
It's
So,
fascinating.
um, it's not anything like organized religion taught me because I actually grew up, my dad was an atheist, so we weren't even allowed to go to church. So it wasn't anything like that, but it's just a personal relationship that was, cultivated through the years. And now, I still have a very strong relationship with God. But he, other than that personal relationship that I have, I don't really buy into religious stuff in other organizations. Try to stay away from it actually because it's just people in general I feel like can corrupt it.
I can see that.
Yeah, and so I try to stay away from it because there's like a lot of hypocrisy and corruption.
Uh,
But at the same time, like I can go anywhere and you know and participate and feel okay as long as I know it's not like, you know what I mean? So, for example, like I went to a Rastafarian church and I
okay.
was like, this is cool, like I've been to Catholic churches. I'm like, that's cool. Like I can tap into the spirit of God wherever I am if the spirit of God is there. Like in martial arts, there's traces of God everywhere, obviously, because art in general was created by the creator, science was created by the creator, the essences of the divine that we all hold because we were made in God's image. That's all apparent to me and I can feel it like wherever I go, especially in art, in science, um, in nature. So I feel his spirit everywhere. And when I recognize it, I can definitely tap into it and enjoy it. But um as far as like other spiritual stuff, I'm not really into it that much in martial art. I try not to get involved with like idols,
Hmm.
like meaning
You feel that takes away from the singular aspect of a divine creator.
like I don't like when you get involved with a group and then it gets like cultish.
Hmm.
I don't like that. Like I don't like when one master like becomes like so egotistical and everyone like worships that one person. Like I'm not really into that.
I understand.
But I
And
enjoy the beauty of the divine in the actual art form.
that reminds me more of like an approach to studying the metaphysical, what constitutes a person? Like if you were to break it up into parts, that's where I feel like a lot of the spiritual from the martial arts or certain religious traditions or even individual spiritual perspectives really comes to light is what makes a person. I like to think of it as, even though I'm an atheist and I don't believe in the supernatural, I visually represent it in this light. I imagine the mind, the body, and the soul, or the spirit. Even though I don't think there is such a thing as an immortal soul that will live on after I die, I still imagine it as something that is in my body to help me utilize my body to the best of my ability. It's like, when I'm breaking a board, when you're doing board breaking, you've got to really focus. You got to take yourself out of your own head. And then I imagine a strength building up in my chest, coursing into my arm, and then impacting upon, contact at the moment I strike. So that's where I find like I can take ideas that I may not necessarily agree with, but learn from and apply in my life in ways that might benefit me.
Yeah, I love that. I think that just the fact that you are able to know that that exists and connect with it kind of shows that you're more aware than you actually like if it wasn't real, you wouldn't be able to do that.
Maybe, maybe I'm in my head. I rationalize it as maybe this is the masculine, my right, and um, I rationalize it as uh, my the human condition. The humans have evolved with these social structures in mind, using spiritual language as a means in to really get us on board to working together and convince us to do so. That I'm just hijacking that same, you know, uh, perspective to use what I believe is a falsehood to try and make myself do things I want to do. But maybe it is real. I don't know. Maybe it is
Yeah.
actually. I don't
I
know.
mean, I do it all the time, so either we're both crazy or
I think everyone's a little crazy to begin with. So
either
I'm
we're
not the
both,
best
like,
person
just
to ask
have wild imaginations or it really is real. I mean,
that. It might be. It might very well be. These are some things that can't be tested or proven. So
yeah. So I really enjoyed this conversation and, I thought this was so eye-opening, interesting, and, I would love to have you back on as well.
I'd be honored. I learned so much from this. It's weird, not more about myself because of the questions you asked. It made me think things that I hadn't thought of about myself. So thank you so much for that.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for being on.
Of course, I look forward to talking more in the future about whether it's our current martial arts training, if we're keeping up with that, or any other topics, because you seem like someone with a wide breadth of experience, with much to share and much to learn from.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Murat.
Anytime soon. You take care, okay? Have a
Okay.
wonderful rest of your day.
You too. Talk to you soon.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.